What's up guys, recently I've done a video about Fall Guys and how I made that in 24 hours. You guys loved it so much. So today we're gonna see how to make a shader like this and how to change it in real time. As usual, my name is Ferdinando, but you can call me Ferdi. Let's start by creating a Unity project. We're going to use the shader graph, so we either need the high definition render pipeline or the universal render pipeline. I'm going to use that one for this project because I already built the entire Fall Guys video with that. So delete everything in the scene, and I'm going to create a sphere as a basic object to apply my shader. You guys can use your character or whatever mesh you would like to use. Remember to be tidy and create a nice material folder, and let's create a PBR graph inside that. That's gonna be the blueprint for everything. We're gonna need to create a couple different properties that are gonna drive the entire shader. I'm gonna create one called base color A and another one that's gonna be base color B. Those two are gonna be the main colors that are gonna switch based on the pattern applied to them. Reference is really important, is what we're gonna use to change everything through code runtime. So remember to change that as well. I'm gonna use the same naming convention because it's easier to remember. I also imported the texture from the previous video, and we're gonna actually use them in the same way. So I created another property of type texture 2D and I renamed that to patterns. I did the same with the reference because it's easier to remember and to do that later in code. Finally, with the three properties, we can start connect all of them together. I'm gonna use a node called blend, and that's gonna be what we're gonna use to mix everything together. Remember to set the mode to override and connect the base color A and the base color B. The pattern is gonna be what we use as opacity. To do that, we need a sample texture 2D and connect your pattern to that. Basically, the super base layout, it's ready. We're just missing a couple extra things, so I wanna create a vector one and call it scale. That's gonna let us change the scale of your texture at runtime, because you know some texture might look nice, some texture might look too small or too big, so you need some sort of value. The only node missing is tiling and offset, so you need to connect your scale to the tiling value and connect that to the sample texture 2D. Finally, connect everything together to the albedo, and your shader is ready to be applied to your object, character, sphere, whatever you're using. You just need to right click on your shader and create a new material. Name it something that makes sense and apply it to your object. And finally, now we can change the scale of your pattern, change the color A, color B, and change even the actual pattern itself. So it's looking quite nice. Quick tip, remember if you're using a different object with the same shader, when you actually change the values on the shader, it's going to change to all of the objects. So if you need more objects with different shaders, just do a copy of the shader itself. It's time to create some UI to be able to change the shader at runtime during the game. I'm going to create a canvas object. If you want to know more about that and how it works, let me know in the comments down below, and I'm going to do a tutorial about it. I'm going to create 4 different buttons, 2 for the colors and 2 for the pattern. That's going to be our basic to be able to click and change everything on runtime. The basic setup is there, but the buttons still don't change anything, so we actually need to create a new null object and apply a texture manager script that we're going to create in C#. We can delete everything because we're going to create our custom function, and we can start by creating a couple of variables. The first one is going to be a material variable that I'm going to call mat, and I'm going to call a couple of texture 2D type that I'm going to call texture 1, texture 2. The last thing we need is a float scale. And all of this is basically what we already seen in the shader. It's just a way to be able to change it from here in code. We need a couple reference for base color A and base color B. So a couple more variables, this time private variables for them. And it's time to create our first public function. Public is really important because otherwise your button is not going to be able to see it. It's going to have a return type of void. And we're just gonna call it change color A. Here basically we're gonna define the actual color for base color A and base color B. I'm gonna do that by saying base color B equal to new color, and I already chose a couple of different RGB values, so I'm writing those in. The only last thing you need to do, in my case, I found that the color was really crazy, so I had to divide the entire thing by 255 to be able to fit the color between 0 and 1. based on your game and the way you're choosing your color, you might do this in a completely different way, even with a public field. That kind of worked for me, so you have a little bit of freedom to experiment what actually works for you and what's best for your game. I'm just gonna go ahead and do basically the same for color B. At this point, we just need to apply this to our shader, and the way to do that is to call that material property and say set color. This here, the string, is gonna be actually what we brought in the shader, so you need to match 100%, otherwise it's gonna give you error. And the second thing is actually to pass a color, in this case base color A. Exactly the same for base color B. Remember to check if your reference is actually called base color B and to pass base color B. Basically now you can change shader from this function. I'm gonna copy this function, make it the same, and just call it change color B. I'm just gonna change the RGB values with something else I already chose. Pro tip, there are better ways of doing this, like having functions with parameters and passing those through the UI. So you will save a lot of time because you have just one function rather than the way I'm doing it here, like having color A and color B. But that will require a little bit more of work, and here I just wanted to show the super basic setup. Time to actually create the other function, the change texture function. This one's gonna allow us to change the pattern that we can pick from the UI. It's quite similar, to be honest, and we just need to pass to the material the scale value. I already tested mine and I kind of know what value works for what texture. I highly encourage you to test what scale value works for you, and we're gonna pass that at a set float. Same, remember to check if the reference name is matching this one, and we're gonna actually pass the scale. Finally, we're gonna pass the texture with mat.setTexture, and we're gonna pass that into the pattern value because it's what we chose in the reference name. We're gonna do the same for texture 2, and we're actually ready. The last thing missing is make sure the UI is actually working. So let's select everything here. We need to reference the material and the couple texture we choose, and in the button we need to drag and drop the texture manager object in the on click event. Doing that is going to show a lot of functions. Sorry if it's out of screen, but you just need to select the change texture and change color function, and basically everything is going to work. That's why it's really important to have them public to be able to do this step. If you now play the game, you're gonna see that everything is working, guys. We finally have a shader that you can change in real time and change either the color or the pattern or whatever you want to. So you're ready to go out there and apply that to your own character and your own model. If you enjoyed it, we got a new subscriber. If you enjoyed this content, remember to leave a like, and if you want to know when the next video is out, remember to subscribe and hit the bell button. I'm gonna do more tutorials based on the challenge that I do on the channel, so remember to stick around and see you soon.